Hey everyone, it's good to see you here. I am so excited today to talk to you guys about something that has absolutely made probably the second biggest impact in my entire life. And so this is something that is really near and dear to my heart. It's something that I get excited about talking about. It's something that I study all the time. And I have been learning about this and studying this for the last 5 years. And it has changed the way I interact with life. And that thing that we're talking about is human design. And so today I have with me Marla Mack, who is an expert in the field of human design. She's actually a coach who helps people find their genius through their human design. So we're going to just talk a little bit about human design in a very real, relatable, practical way today. We're not going to get too deep into the nuances of the charts specifically, but I do want to give just a general introduction so that people can start playing with the idea of human design and understanding what it is, and then hopefully move into finding your own human design and having that guidance in your life. The human design, to me, it's another piece of information about ourselves that gives us a framework with which to go out and be who we are authentically. So it's really about living authentically to who we are specifically. And it's a very practical, grounded information. So Marla, how do you explain human design to a brand new person who's never heard of it before? Like your 30-second pitch. What is human design?
Thanks, Stacey. It's interesting because there's a couple of different ways I'll describe it. One way is from a tool perspective. I'll just say it's like your astrological birth chart on steroids. But for some people, and some people can relate and connect to astrology. They understand that astrology has a certain amount of grounding. But I would say for me, it's the map of your nature, how you were born and sort of these natural tendencies, gifts, talents, potentials that you were born with before you experience life and take in life from the people around you and the experiences and the environment around you. So it's really kind of if you look at a pyramid, it's to me, it's the fundamental piece of the pyramid, right? It's who you are at your core and at your base. And then everything, your life experiences kind of come on top of that and shape and mold that.
Okay.
The challenge we've run into is we're so used to being told how to show up, what to do, what to look like, what success looks like, what's right, what's wrong. And
What we should be doing.
what we should, yes, the shoulds. And we have not been taught to stay in touch and connect back with who we are at the core, and what feels good at our core.
Yes. Yeah. And so human design is a pathway back to your core.
Yeah.
So when we come into the world and we're raised by our parents and our church and our school and all the different influences that come in and tell us what we should do, that's what human design calls conditioning. So we're conditioned our entire life, and a lot of it is conditioning us away from who we truly are versus helping us just be who we are. So we get conditioned away from who we are, and then we get older and we're like, wait a minute, life doesn't feel good. I don't like showing up this way. I don't want to do this job that I got. I don't want to have this career that I have, or so, it just doesn't fit me. It doesn't feel good. Who am I? What do I really want? And then we have this whole journey back to our authentic self. And so it's kind of like the journey of what is the fable in the Bible that talks about was it the kid who left? He left home.
Oh, the prodigal son?
The prodigal son, yes. So we start out authentic in who we are, then we're conditioned away from that. We go out and sow those seeds, and then we have a journey that comes back to our authentic self. And so human design is a pathway to help us decondition or unlearn all the things that we've learned all of our life. I like the way you explain that because it brings in that whole factor of conditioning. And human design actually combines 5 different ancient wisdoms. So you mentioned astrology as one of those. Then there's the Chinese I Ching, There's the Hindu chakra system. There is, what else is there? There's two
The
more.
Kabbalah, the Judaic Kabbalah.
Kabbalah, and then quantum physics, I believe, is the other one.
Mhm.
So it combines all of these together. And so it doesn't really matter, it doesn't, your religious beliefs or your spiritual beliefs or any of that is not, this doesn't change any of that. This is just another piece of, it's another clue, another piece of information for you to add in your arsenal and use for your benefit for life. So basically that's a basic understanding of human design. And in order to have your chart or to run your chart, it's based on your time, place, and date of birth. So if you have those three pieces of information, you can get a chart run, and then you can learn about yourself. So when I learned about human design, it was in 2017, and it was a birthday gift that I gave myself, where I talked to I got a human design introduction at that point. And the things that she told me that day, I don't remember a word of what she said. What I remember was a feeling of resonance and a feeling of, oh my gosh, this just fits. It fits so much with who I am. And so what she told me then after that was, don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for it. Go out now with this information and experiment with it and see how it works for you, because we're all so unique. There's not one owner's guide or one owner's manual for each person and how they're supposed to operate. But human design gives you a framework, and then you go out and experiment with that. And so that's what I did. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to experiment with this. And so what I learned about myself that day was that I'm a manifesting generator, which means I'm multi-passionate. So for me, having one career in one lane in one thing, it's not necessarily how I'm designed. I'm designed to be multi-passionate. So that gave me freedom to just really start exploring multiple avenues instead of just trying to find that one lane that I fit in. And she also told me that I had a sacral authority. And so this is something interesting that we can talk about, is the decision-making process in human design. So human design says that our minds are not designed to make decisions, and that we each have a different way to make decisions. And our chart gives us a clue about that. So what are the different ways that people can make decisions according to the human design? There's sacral, and then there's emotional, all the different ones.
And then there's splenic, which is intuition based. Then there are a few others which are will, or it might be called ego, but will, sort of your willpower. So if somebody's driven by their willpower, this is really about determining whether or not this is something that feels like they feel very strongly or compelled decision wise and to do, and also to check in that they have the energetic resources to be able to execute. And then there are a couple of others which have very similar processes. It's all about really talking things through and feeling them through. Ultimately, the connection to the correct decision will depend if they're identity based, if that is a decision-making authority. It's what connects to who they are, a decision that connects to a reflection of their natural, core being. And then there's what's called mental projector. So they do have, they are sort of based in that sort of analytical mind. However, it's not our typical, the way we think of a mental decision as like pros and cons and weigh this out and what's logical. They too need to talk it out because it needs to connect to their definition. And then the last one is lunar, which pertains to about 1% of the population. That is for reflectors only. Reflectors are very open naturally, and they take in a lot of the environment around them. They need about a month to really feel through different opportunities and different options to feel what might be a correct decision. And sometimes it can take more than one monthly cycle to really hone in on that. So the interesting this so different people have different ways of making decisions. There more people tend to be emotional authority, which is they need time for clarity. And then as the different authorities are revealed through charts, it depending on a person's chart, it's a smaller and smaller and smaller percentage of the population.
Okay.
The majority of people need time to make a correct decision. And I
Okay.
think that that is something that we've missed learning or embracing in society because we're so focused on make a quick decision, right? Make a quick decision and make that decision right. And, you know, and push and force decisions when actually we need time for our body to give us the feedback on what is correct or
And that's a good point, that we have neurons, we have neuron cells, which are like brain cells, they process information in our bodies. So it's not just in our brains that we have these neurons that process information. We have them in our body, we have them in our heart, we have them in our gut, and we probably have them in other places. But those are the two that I've read about where we have a concentrated amount of neurons where we can process information. So we can get intelligence from our bodies outside of just our brains. So according to human design, the mind is a complex mechanism that's very powerful. It's just not meant to make decisions. It doesn't have all of the data in order to make the decisions. Our body does, which is a crazy thing to think about. And it's not something that we're taught. We're conditioned away from that. But when we come into this planet, when we're born, we innately know how to get our needs met. There's an intelligence that runs through our systems that helps us get our needs met. And it's just like the animals that can live and thrive and have all of their needs met without having the mind where they can process the information that way. So we are conditioned away from our body's intelligence, and we're very tuned into our mental intelligence or intellect. And so human design is about coming back to using our body intelligence to make decisions. So what that looks like in a practical way for me, and then we'll talk about yours, because I think you're the emotional, I'm the sacral. Sacral means it's a gut response, and my gut says yes or no. And the way it talks to me and how it works for me is I get really lit up about something. Lit up meaning I get excited about something. I'm pulled towards something. It is a real response that happens, and it is a physical response if I stop and think about what's going on. So how that's looked for me in this experiment of using this to make decisions, one example that I give of that is that I got invited to a entrepreneurs club. It was a national entrepreneurs club, and it was a hefty amount of money at a time where I didn't have a tremendous amount of money. And my gut was super lit up about it. I was like drawn to this group, and I wanted to be a part of this group, and it just lit me up inside. But my mind said, no, that's too much money. You're in between businesses. Now's not a time for you to invest in networking. Now's a time to invest in hunkering down and figuring out what you're going to do, because you don't have a business. You don't even have an income. Why are you going to spend this money? So I went through this whole thing, and I thought, I've committed to having this experiment. So I'm going to have this experiment. I am going to go with my gut, and I'm going to see what happens. And so I wrote the check and sent it off and joined the club. And it was great. I went to a couple meetings, and then after that, I didn't want to go back anymore. I wasn't lit up about it anymore. So I stopped going. And it wasn't until almost a full year later that event, or me being a part of that event, paid off in a phenomenal way. I mean, a huge way, in that my new business evolved and expanded because of the connections I made way back then. But my mind could not know that was the place I needed to be. So it was really listening to that. Another example of this for me is I've had several business partnerships that didn't work out in my life. And so at that phase in my life, when I was experimenting with my human design, I had decided by my mind that I would never have another partner. Like, I'm not having partners. Partners don't work out. Like, I had this whole belief system, this whole conditioning going about partnerships and how terrible they were. I would never trust another person. Well, when I'm going through this experiment and I'm having conversations with this person in my life, she was an acquaintance at the time, and we were talking about business and we were talking about a specific type of business. And I kept getting so lit up. Every time I talked to her, I was so excited about talking to her about this business. And I like had this desire to be in business with her as a partner. And again, right, my mind says, no, partnerships don't work out. You don't even know this woman. You don't know her character. You don't know, like, there's so many things you don't know about her. But my gut was lit up. And I said, I'm in this experiment. I'm going to experiment with this. And so I did connect with her, and we created a partnership. And then we got a couple more partners that came from the original group that I talked about earlier. And it's worked out really beautifully. And had I listened to my mind, I would have missed both of those opportunities. And one of the businesses I have right now with 3 products and 4 brands would be no more. Like, I mean, it wouldn't even be a thing had I listened to my mind and let my mind drive my decision-making process. So and this is why I love this so much, and I'm so passionate about it, and I feel so strongly about introducing other people to it, because of what it's done to my life and what I've seen, how I've seen it work in my life. And that's just 2 examples of many examples of how this works. And so what examples do you have? And talk about your process. So mine, as a sacral authority, I'm in the moment making that decision. So in the moment I can say, I'm lit up, let's go. So you are different. Your human design says you're an emotional authority, which means you have a process to go through, and it takes a little longer for you to have that clarity. So talk a little bit and can you give some examples of what that looks like in your life?
I can absolutely. So I am a manifesting generator as well. And so what it means is my sacral, or my gut, is defined. So it's active. So I do get those initial hits of gut excitement, like, woohoo, right? This sounds really great. What I need to do to make a correct decision that feels good is to generally give myself some space or some time to contemplate, at least sleeping on it, probably even a number of days. And that can create some anxiety for people who are not used to it, thinking, well, I might miss the opportunity. I might miss the opportunity. And what I've come to discover over practicing this and doing the experiment is that there are things I cannot see in the moment. And I've accepted that. It's almost like this decision looks exciting, but there's a veiled curtain, and I cannot see the full clarity of the picture until I can push back the curtain, and that takes a little bit of time. And it could be that over the number of days, some clarity pops up, right? Some new information pops up, which makes me go, oh, wow, no, I'm glad I didn't say yes to this initial excitement, because now I can see this doesn't fit, or this isn't what I thought it was. And I'm also have been able to fine tune the sensation in my body. And I was always a very brain person, right? Make decisions logically, and, business, corporate, MBA, all of that. What I've come to realize with decisions is that there's that initial hit of excitement with my gut saying, ooh, this kind of looks good. And I've noticed there's a difference between a nervous excitement, which almost is an adrenal kind of pressure of, hey, just commit to it or make a decision, and the emotional clarity and the calmness of, yes, this is the right decision. This is the right path. And so for me, as much as I love fun and excitement and woohoo, right, things that are great, a correct decision for me actually comes from a sense of calm and peace, and knowing, like, this is good, right? This is the right thing to do. And that has been such a gift and a learning experience, because that was never how I made decisions. And it has given me that benefit of being able to focus my attention properly, instead of hope, always hoping for the best, hope,
Yes.
and having to backtrack often because I'm like,
Mhm.
man, that didn't really work out. I wasted a lot of
Yes.
time. I wasted a lot of energy. And I think that's another thing we really want to consider is that an incorrect decision or a decision that's been rushed will
Mhm.
cost you time, will cost you energy,
Mhm.
and will take you away from things that really would have been correct
Mhm.
because now you're preoccupied putting attention to things which aren't
Yes.
productive, right? Or
Yes.
beneficial or feel
Yes.
good.
And I have a perfect example of that. I have a friend who is emotional. That's her decision making is emotional. So she was experimenting with her design and she got invited into this business partnership. And they said, give us your price. Like, what is your price to be a part of this? And she was ecstatic. It was an opportunity that lit her up. She was very clear that it was exciting. It was something she wanted to be a part of. She came up with a number of what, she thought would be appropriate. And it was even a little bit more than she would normally charge, but it felt good. And so she was doing this. And then she remembered she was emotional authority.
Mm,
So she stopped and she said, okay, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Let me sleep on this. I'll get back to you tomorrow. And so she processed through the day, the next, slept through it. The next morning she woke up and had such a clarity that the price she was going to charge the day before was half of what it
mhm,
should be. And her price should be double that. And so that next day she went to them and said, here's my price. And it was twice as much as it was the day before, but she felt really solid with it that day. And they accepted it. There was no question and they moved forward and everything was fine. So that's a perfect example of had she acted immediately, she would have been shortchanging herself and
mhm.
not making what she should be making, which would cause her to have to work harder, right, to make up that difference versus sleeping on it. Do you have any other examples, real life examples that can help explain that?
I do, and I love her story because there's so much in that, but I love that story where she, it actually benefited her greatly, and the advantage of giving yourself that space and that time to just let the dust settle a bit, so you can see a
Mhm.
little bit more clearly. So for me, my one of my favorite stories is the first time I learned about my human design, learned about my emotional authority, and deliberately experimented with it. So, I mean, my first experience learning my human design was, I think this was uh, heaven sent. Now, I'm a very grounded person. I'm a very real world person, but I really think I was in a bit of an existential crisis, dark night of the soul, all of these things that I was doing on, sort of through my head. I was in a business that wasn't working. And I just allowed myself to be carried instead of making very conscious decisions about this business. And what should have been, it was my third year in this business. It was financial based. I had a money coaching background, so it made sense. It made sense, right?
Mhm.
On paper. And I was a mortgage agent, and it wasn't, things weren't unfolding the way I thought they would. And I was not really using my talents and my gifts, and I kept on hitting walls in trying to build
Mhm.
this business. But when I got to my third year, it should have been my best year. I had a great pipeline. I had all these leads, and all of these files and all these people that I was working with, like these files would implode one by one by one. And it wasn't like,
Mm.
oh, they imploded it within a week. They imploded months later, and as a mortgage agent, you don't get paid until that mortgage closes. So if there's an implosion prior to that time, there's no paycheck. And it should have been my best year in terms of building my business and my reputation. It was actually my worst.
Mm.
And for the weirdest reasons, even my mentor was like, I don't understand. Like, it's just
Mm.
bizarre what I'm watching unfold. And I remember thinking, like, I asked the universe questions, like, what am I here for? What's it? Because I was at a loss. I couldn't figure it out anymore. And human design came to me. I learned about the basics of my human design, and I was blown away because I realized, oh, I'm not broken. I don't need to be fixed. I'm just on the wrong path. And it's really as simple as that. And then that's what started me down the path of learning human design, because I thought if I can give this gift to other people
Mhm.
and realize when they're hitting a wall, when they're in their existential crisis, this is really a beautiful tool. Like it is that little manual to go, hey, here's your little manual,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And so in this time, I learned about my emotional authority. And I would say human design is full of gifts and gems. But if there's one takeaway, to learn how you're designed to make correct decisions, I think is
Mhm.
probably one of the most brilliant gifts of human design.
Mhm.
And I discovered I was emotional authority. I need to sleep on things. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to put this to the test. So I was at a crossroads where I figured I had invested all this, 3 years, lots of money, lots of training, lots of time in this business. I'm going to take a look at now what my next step is. I was still trying to make it work, right? And
Mhm.
so, do I stay with my current brokerage, mortgage brokerage, which lovelyly, maybe I just wasn't using my mentor correctly, or do I move to this other brokerage that may be able to support me in a different way? And I spoke to them, I interviewed, I hummed and hawed, but I said to myself, I am not making a decision until I have the clarity. Like I am not forcing this decision, and it will take as long as it needs to take. And it took about 3.5 weeks.
Mm.
And so that's been interesting to me because I've noticed that a few times that's an interesting window for me for some of these deeper. This was a huge decision.
Mhm.
And it could, I mean, for different, I just want to say as a disclaimer, for emotional authorities, you could have any window of time, right? 3.5 weeks was mine. It
Mhm.
could be 2 days for somebody else. But I just said, I'm not rushing this decision. And I didn't put any pressure. I just let things come to me. And one day I woke up and all of a sudden, I had the clarity that I
Mhm.
could never have had before.
Mhm.
I always thought my choice was A or B, right? Brokerage A or brokerage B. Stay with my
Mhm.
brokerage, move to the other one. And when I woke up one day, it was like opening a box, and now I cannot unsee what I just saw. And the
Mm.
answer was C, get out of Dodge, get out of the
Mm.
business, quit the business. This is not for you. It doesn't matter what brokerage you're in. This is just not where you need to be.
Mm.
And I was shocked, but I
Mhm.
was so relieved because I was like, yes, that just feels so right.
Mm.
And that was, I mean, that was life changing because I
Yeah.
completely shifted my path, my earning, and I immediately at that time I had started, I think, like a level 1 human design program, and I was like, I am so committed to this, and
Mhm.
this lights me up so much.
Mhm.
And that's where I focused my attention. And it's been a world of difference. So,
So
yeah,
the doors aren't, so you were running into walls constantly. Once you
constantly.
had that clarity and you shifted to option C, then
Mhm.
did you stop running into walls?
Yes, I would say things were not nearly as difficult. Now, it doesn't mean I never have problems or issues,
Right.
but I am so much more aware now. When I
Mhm.
hit a roadblock, I'm like, oh, what's up? Right?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
this? What's going on? But I didn't really completely appreciate that part of my, my crossroads was because of what I was doing, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, like, oh, I'm 49, I should figure out this, I should have this life thing figured out by now, right? That
Mhm.
was that was probably the biggest bogus
Right.
statement ever.
Yeah.
I just had it in my mind, I should know what I'm doing by now. And and my human design told me not necessarily, you're a line 3, you experiment. So it gave me so much freedom. My human design gave me so much freedom and grace
Mhm.
to realize that I'm perfectly designed for who I came here to be and what I
Mhm.
came here to do. And it also taught me I don't need to worry about filling gaps and voids. So I
Mhm.
would always read business books on how to be better at this, better at that, better at something else. And I came to realize I can read those for pleasure and enjoyment, and maybe I'll pick up something, but I don't need to read them from a place of lack anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to fix myself. There's nothing
Right.
to fix.
Yes.
The bigger gift is, like you said, the unlearning.
Yeah, deconditioning, like getting rid of
Decondition.
those the conditioning that says you should do this and you should do that, getting rid of that. And that, I love that you talked about freedom and grace, because that is such a perfect way to put the what I've received from the gift of human design, because I don't have to worry about figuring it all out. That's the other, I mean, that's where you get the freedom and the grace, where I can just flow in the present moment, knowing that I have my decision maker is on, it's in my gut, and it will tell me yes or no. And things come quite naturally. We're both the generator type. So, as a generator type in human design, invitations come, things come to us, opportunities come our way, and we respond based on our gut response. Yours is over time, mine is more in the moment. But knowing that I have that gift or that ability to tap into that, I don't have to figure everything out. I don't have to worry about the decisions I'm making. I don't have to worry about, oh, if I make this decision, then what happens? Right? Oh gosh, this is a big decision. If I make this, then what happens? I don't, my mind cannot see the future.
Mhm.
What I know is that whatever it is that turns on this intelligence in my body knows the future. I mean, I can say that there is a divine intelligence that lives all around us and through us. And if we learn how to tap into it better, then we can have a more grace and freedom in life to just move through. And so it's a great feeling to know that I just need to show up and in my fullness in the present moment and be guided by that divine intelligence that speaks through my gut to me in my day-to-day practice. Well, this has turned into, we didn't know what we were going to talk about today, but this has turned into the decision-making process, which is a huge piece. But it's just one piece
Mhm.
of human design. Human design is very multifaceted. There's type, there's how you make decisions, there's how you're designed, what you're designed to do. Like, what is your role on the earth? What is it that you're supposed to do? And so that, I think we should talk on another video. But for now, I think what we did today was a great introduction for people who've never heard of human design before, to kind of understand on a more practical level how it impacts an individual. So with that, that's what we're going to talk about today. That's all we're going to talk about today. Thanks for listening. And if you have other questions, or if you want to find your own human design, there is information on the ceoessentials.net website. Under the course tab, there's actually a human design section, and it's in number order, so it's 1, 2, 3. So if you do the 1, that actually is some videos that Marla's put together where you can actually get your chart from wherever it is you need to get your chart from. And then there's other videos that you can watch that gives you more of an introduction. We're also available to help you with your introduction to human design. So if that's something that interests you, reach out, send an email, and we will get you connected with the right resources for you to be introduced to your human design, so that you can have your own experiment and find more freedom and grace in these very turbulent times that we're living in. I think it's important now more than it's ever been for us to find our true authentic selves and to forge a new path in the world that we live in today. So thank you all for listening, and thank you, Marla, for being here, for being a part of this with us.
Well, thank you, Stacy, for inviting me.